The void between galaxies had always been considered empty space, a cosmic highway for faster-than-light travel where civilizations could navigate without interference. The Galactic Council, composed of 47 different species, had mapped every safe corridor and established trade routes that connected thousands of worlds across the Andromeda Spiral. For 3,000 years, these paths had remained secure, protected by ancient treaties and the mutual understanding that the void belonged to no one. That understanding shattered on a Tuesday. Captain Zara-chan of the UES Harmony was conducting a routine supply run to the mining colonies of Kepler 442b when her sensors detected something impossible. Where empty space should have stretched for light years, a massive structure materialized as if reality itself had been folded and twisted into an unnatural shape. The object defied every law of physics the human species had learned since joining the galactic community 2 centuries ago. "Computer, run a full spectral analysis," Chun commanded, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface that controlled her ship's advanced sensor array. The Harmony was one of humanity's newest vessels, equipped with technology that merged human innovation with alien engineering principles learned from their partners in the Council. "Analysis complete, Captain," the ship's artificial intelligence responded in its characteristically calm tone. "The structure measures approximately 47,000 kilometers in length and appears to be constructed from materials not found in our current database. Energy signatures are unprecedented." Chun frowned as she studied the readouts. The structure looked like a twisted version of a space station, but its design incorporated elements that seemed to mock the architectural principles of every known species. Spires jutted out at impossible angles, connected by bridges that appeared to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The entire construction pulsed with a sickly green light that made her stomach churn just looking at it. "Incoming transmission, Captain," her communications officer announced. Lieutenant Torres was young for his position, but he had earned his place through exceptional skill in xenolinguistics. It's addressed to all vessels in the sector. The signal is being broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. "Put it through," Chen ordered, settling back in her command chair. She had dealt with aggressive species before, territorial disputes over mining rights, and even the occasional pirate attack. Whatever this was, humanity had faced worse and prevailed. The main screen flickered and filled with an image that made every human on the bridge recoil instinctively. The being that appeared was tall and unnaturally thin, with limbs that bent in ways that suggested extra joints hidden beneath flowing robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself. Its face was gaunt and angular, with eyes that glowed with the same sickly green light as its station. When it smiled, rows of teeth became visible that looked more like crystalline shards than anything organic. "Greetings, lesser beings," the creature said, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed designed to inspire dread. "I am Vexthal the Harvester, though your primitive minds might better understand me as the Grinch of the stars. I have come to collect what rightfully belongs to me." Chen exchanged glances with her senior staff. The translator was working, but something about the being's speech pattern suggested it was deliberately choosing words to maximize psychological impact. This wasn't just communication, it was psychological warfare. "This is Captain Zara-chan of the United Earth Ship Harmony," she responded, activating the transmission array. "You are interfering with established trade routes protected by Galactic Council treaties. State your business, and move your vessel to a designated area." Vexthal's laugh was like the sound of solar winds screaming through a nebula. Treaties? Councils? Such adorable concepts from species that have barely learned to crawl among the stars. "I recognize no authority save my own, and I claim everything I survey as mine to take." The transmission shifted, showing views from across the galaxy. Chen watched in horror as similar stations appeared near every major world, trade hub, and colony. Each station was different in design, but shared that same twisted architecture and malevolent energy signature. On the screens, she could see civilian vessels being pulled toward the stations by some kind of tractor beam technology that operated on principles unknown to galactic science. "Behold my harvest," Vexthul continued. "For too long, I have watched lesser species spread across the cosmos like an infection, claiming worlds that should remain pristine, building civilizations that pollute the pure emptiness of space. You celebrate life and joy and progress, and your very existence offends me. So I shall take it all." Chin's blood ran cold as she realized the scope of what was happening. This wasn't an invasion in any traditional sense. The stations weren't attacking military targets or attempting to conquer territory. Instead, they were systematically draining something from every world they encountered. Her sensors showed energy patterns that suggested the stations were somehow extracting the life force itself from planets, leaving behind dead husks where thriving civilizations had existed moments before. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm receiving distress calls from 17 different star systems. The Altarian homeworld has gone dark. The trading posts at Vega Prime aren't responding. It's like everything is just being switched off." On the screen, Vexthul's smile grew wider. Music, laughter, love, hope, dreams, ambition, all the precious emotions and energies that make your little lives meaningful. I shall drain them all and store them in my collection, leaving your worlds as empty and silent as they should have always been. This galaxy will return to the perfect void it was meant to be. Chun stood from her chair, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. As a human captain, she had always prided herself on finding diplomatic solutions to conflicts. Humanity's greatest strength in the galactic community had been their ability to bridge differences between species that had been enemies for millennia. But this wasn't a conflict that could be resolved through negotiation. "Computer, open a channel to Galactic Council Emergency Frequency," she ordered. "Priority Alpha. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Shun of the UES Harmony. We have a code black situation in Sector 779. Hostile entity of unknown origin is conducting systematic attacks on civilian populations across multiple star systems, requesting immediate council response and military support." The response came within seconds, but it wasn't from the council headquarters on Taurus Prime. Instead, her screen filled with the image of Admiral Sarah Mitchell, the highest-ranking human officer in the Galactic Defense Forces. Mitchell's expression was grim, and Chun could see the strain of command weighing heavily on her features. "Zara, we've been monitoring the situation," Mitchell said. 43 member worlds have gone silent in the past hour. Whatever this Vexthul is using, it's technology beyond anything we've encountered. Our best scientists can't even figure out how his stations are maintaining structural integrity, let alone how they're draining the life from entire planets. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Chen asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "All available ships are being called to Earth," Mitchell replied. "If this harvest continues at its current rate, we'll lose everything within 72 hours. The Council is, well, most of the Council species are either already affected or in full retreat. Humanity is being asked to coordinate the defense." Chun felt a chill run down her spine. In the 200 years since first contact, humans had always been the newcomers in galactic politics. They were respected for their adaptability and diplomatic skills, but they had never been asked to lead a coalition of species with thousands of years more experience. The fact that they were being given this responsibility now meant that the situation was beyond desperate. "Understood, Admiral. Setting course for Earth immediately." As the Harmony turned toward home, Chen watched the tactical display update with new information. Red markers indicated worlds that had gone silent, and the pattern was spreading like a virus through the galaxy. Vexthul stations seemed to be targeting population centers first, focusing on planets where large numbers of sentient beings lived and worked and created the kind of positive emotions that apparently offended him so deeply. "Captain," her science officer spoke up. "Dr. Sarah Kim was one of the finest xenobiologists in the fleet, and her expertise had helped humanity understand dozens of alien species. I've been analyzing the energy readings from the stations. There's something you need to see. Chen moved to Kim's station, where holographic displays showed complex energy pattern analyses. The data was almost incomprehensible, showing interactions between matter and energy that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The stations aren't just draining energy, Kim explained. They're specifically targeting what we might call positive emotional resonance. Joy, love, hope, laughter. These emotions apparently generate quantum field fluctuations that Vexthal's technology could detect and extract. It's like he's literally stealing the happiness from worlds. That's impossible, Chen said. Emotions don't generate measurable energy fields. That's what we thought, Kim agreed. But according to this data, consciousness and emotion create ripples in space-time that we've never been able to detect before. Vexthal has somehow learned to harvest those ripples. He's not just killing civilizations. He's taking away everything that makes life worth living and storing it for himself. The implications hit Chun like a physical blow. If Vexthal could drain the positive emotions from worlds, then even if some population survived, they would be left as empty shells, unable to feel joy or hope or love. It would be a fate worse than death, turning the galaxy into a collection of worlds populated by the living dead. How long until we reach Earth? She asked. 18 hours at maximum warp, her navigator replied. Push it to 20 hours beyond safe limits, Chen ordered. I don't care if we burn out the engines. We need to get home before Vexthal's harvest reaches Sol system. As the Harmony raced through space at speeds that made reality blur around them, Chen found herself thinking about what made humanity different from the other Council species. Humans had always been known for their emotional intensity, their ability to feel joy and sorrow and love more deeply than most alien races. It was part of what made them effective diplomats. They could empathize with species that were completely different from themselves. But if that emotional intensity was what Vexthal was harvesting, then humanity might be his primary target. Their homeworld, with its 8 billion inhabitants and rich emotional life, would be like a feast to something that fed on happiness and hope. Captain, Torres called out from his station. I'm picking up another transmission from Vexthal. It's directed specifically at human vessels. Put it through. The screen flickered, and once again Vexthal's unnaturally gaunt face appeared. This time, his smile seemed even more predatory, and his green eyes focused directly on Chun as if he could see her through the transmission. Ah, the humans, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. I have been studying your species with great interest. Such primitive creatures, yet you feel everything so intensely. Your capacity for joy is remarkable, and therefore, you will be particularly satisfying to harvest. Chun felt her crew tense around her, but she kept her voice steady. Earth is protected by the Galactic Defense Fleet. You'll find us more difficult to harvest than you expect. Protection? Vexthal laughed. Child, I have consumed civilizations that ruled the stars when your species was still learning to make fire. I have drained the happiness from worlds that had achieved perfect peace and harmony. Your little fleets are nothing to me. The transmission showed new images, human colonies throughout the galaxy being approached by smaller versions of Vexthal stations. Chun watched in horror as the New Geneva colony, home to 50,000 human settlers, was enveloped in the same sickly green energy. Within minutes, all communication from the colony ceased. But humans do interest me, Vexthal continued. Your emotions burn so brightly, and you cling to hope even in impossible situations. You will make excellent additions to my collection. I think I shall save Earth for last, so that you can watch as I drain every human world in the galaxy. Then, when despair has replaced hope, I will harvest your homeworld and add 8 billion human souls to my feast. The transmission cut off, leaving Chun and her crew in stunned silence. The bridge felt smaller somehow, as if the weight of the galaxy's fate was pressing down on them from all sides. Captain Dr. Kim said quietly. There's something else. I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from the harvested worlds. The process isn't just extracting emotions. It's fundamentally altering the quantum structure of consciousness itself. Even if we could somehow stop Vexthal, I don't think we could reverse what he's done. Those worlds, they're gone forever. Chen closed her eyes and took a deep breath, forcing herself to think clearly despite the magnitude of the crisis. Humanity had always faced impossible odds and found ways to prevail. When they first ventured into space and encountered species with technology thousands of years ahead of them, they had survived through adaptability and determination. When the hegemony wars had threatened to tear the galaxy apart, human diplomats had forged the peace that's still held today. But this was different. Vexthal wasn't just another enemy that could be fought with weapons or reasoned with through diplomacy. He was a force of cosmic nihilism, dedicated to draining the universe of everything that made existence meaningful. Fighting him would require more than military strategy or technological superiority. Torres sent a message to all human ships and colonies, Chun ordered. Tell them to maintain maximum emotional discipline. No celebrations, no large gatherings, anything that might generate the kind of energy signatures Vexthal is looking for. We need to make ourselves as invisible as possible until we can figure out how to fight back. Captain. As the Harmony continued its race toward Earth, Chen found herself wondering if there was something about humanity that might give them an edge against Vexthal. Their emotional intensity was apparently what made them attractive targets, but perhaps that same intensity could be turned into a weapon. After all, if positive emotions generated quantum field fluctuations, then maybe there was a way to amplify those fluctuations to levels that even Vexthal couldn't absorb. But first they had to reach Earth. They had to warn the homeworld and coordinate with whatever remained of the Galactic Defense Forces. And they had to find a way to protect 8 billion human lives from a cosmic predator that fed on the very essence of what made life worth living. In the depths of space, Vexthal stations continued their methodical harvest, moving from system to system like a plague of emptiness. And somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, a small human ship raced against time to bring warning of an enemy that threatened not just to destroy civilization, but to drain all meaning from existence itself. The battle for the galaxy's soul was about to begin, and humanity would have to find strength they never knew they possessed to face an enemy that was older than their entire species and hungrier than the void between stars. The Sol system had never seen such a massive gathering of starships. As the UES Harmony dropped out of warp at the edge of Earth's gravity well, Captain Chun found herself staring at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just days ago. Thousands of vessels from dozens of different species hung in formation around humanity's homeworld, their diverse designs creating a tapestry of desperation and determination against the star field. My God, Lieutenant Torres whispered from his station. How many ships made it out? Dr. Kim was already running calculations on her scanner array. I'm reading approximately 4,000 vessels of various classes. That's maybe 10% of the total galactic defense fleet. The rest are either destroyed, captured, or... She didn't finish the sentence, but everyone on the bridge understood. The rest were trapped on worlds that had already been harvested, their crews reduced to empty shells incapable of feeling hope or joy. The communication system crackled to life with dozens of overlapping transmissions in languages both familiar and alien. The universal translator worked frantically to sort through the chaos, but the emotional undertone was the same in every species' voice: fear, confusion, and a desperate search for leadership in the face of something beyond their understanding. Captain Chun, Admiral Mitchell's voice cut through the noise on a priority channel. Report to Luna Station immediately. The emergency council is in session, and we need every experienced captain we can get. Luna Station had been transformed from a research facility into a military command center in the span of just a few hours. As Chen's shuttle approached the docking bay, she could see construction crews working around the clock to install additional communication arrays and defensive systems. The normally orderly corridors of the station buzzed with activity as personnel from dozens of species worked side by side, their usual cultural differences set aside in the face of the crisis. The main conference chamber had been reconfigured to accommodate representatives from every surviving member species of the Galactic Council. Chin recognized many of the faces from diplomatic functions she had attended over the years, but now those same dignitaries looked haggard and desperate. The Altarian ambassador was notably absent. His homeworld had been among the first to fall silent. Admiral Mitchell stood at the center of the chamber, holographic displays surrounding her showing the current tactical situation across the galaxy. Red zones marked systems that had gone dark, yellow indicated areas under immediate threat, and the few remaining green zones were shrinking by the hour. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings, Mitchell began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. The situation is beyond critical. In the past 24 hours, we have lost contact with over 300 worlds. Our best estimates suggest that Vexthal's harvest rate is accelerating. Ambassador Krell of the Centauri Federation raised one of his four arms. His species was known for their logical approach to problem-solving, but even he seemed shaken by the scale of the crisis. Admiral Mitchell, our scientists have been analyzing the quantum signatures from the affected systems. The technology being employed appears to operate on principles that violate our understanding of physics. How does one fight an enemy that can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality? That's exactly what we need to figure out, Mitchell replied. Captain Chun, your ship was one of the first to encounter Vexthal directly. What did you observe about his capabilities? Chun stood and activated her personal data pad, projecting the sensor readings from the Harmony's encounter. The most disturbing aspect is the specificity of his targeting. He's not randomly destroying worlds or harvesting energy in general. He's specifically targeting positive emotional resonance. Joy, hope, love, laughter. These emotions seem to generate quantum field fluctuations that his technology can detect and extract. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber, and Chin turned to see Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's leading expert on consciousness studies and quantum biology. I've been coordinating with research teams across the surviving colonies, and we've discovered something significant. The harvesting process doesn't just drain emotions. It fundamentally alters the quantum structure of consciousness itself. The affected populations aren't just sad or depressed. They've lost the capacity to feel positive emotions at all. The implications sent a chill through the chamber. Several of the alien representatives began speaking simultaneously in their native languages, the universal translators struggling to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Order, Mitchell called out. Dr. Vasquez, continue your report. The quantum signature analysis suggests that consciousness generates measurable effects on space-time through what we might call emotional resonance fields, Dr. Vasquez explained. Until now, we've never had instruments sensitive enough to detect these fields, but Vexthal's technology can not only detect them, but also extract and store them. He's literally collecting the happiness of entire civilizations. Ambassador Tvara of the Volcari Collective leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the light from the holographic displays. You speak of consciousness as if it were a form of energy. This contradicts established scientific principles. That's what we thought, Chen interjected, but the evidence is undeniable. Vexthal himself confirmed it during our communication. He's not just attacking our worlds. He's stealing our capacity for joy and storing it for himself. It's the ultimate form of cosmic parasitism. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's chief xenobiologist, stood from his seat near the front of the chamber. I've been studying the species-specific data, and there's a pattern worth noting. Vexthal seems to be targeting human colonies disproportionately. Our emotional intensity appears to make us particularly attractive to his harvesting technology. Which brings us to our immediate problem, Mitchell said grimly. Long-range sensors have detected one of Vexthal's massive stations moving toward the Sol system. At its current rate of travel, it will arrive within 36 hours. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled on everyone present. Earth, with its 8 billion inhabitants and rich emotional life, would be the greatest prize in Vexthal's collection. If he succeeded in harvesting humanity's homeworld, the resulting loss would effectively end human civilization as a meaningful force in the galaxy. "What about evacuation?" asked Captain Reyes of the UES Phoenix. "We could relocate the population to the outer colonies." 8 billion people? Mitchell shook her head. "Even if we could manage the logistics, where would we take them? Vexthal stations are appearing throughout the galaxy. There's nowhere to run." Chen studied the tactical displays, her mind racing through possibilities. Standard military tactics would be useless against an enemy that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. But perhaps there was another approach, one that took advantage of humanity's greatest strength. "Admiral," she said, stepping forward, "what if we're approaching this wrong? We've been thinking of this as a military problem, but maybe it's not. Vexthal feeds on positive emotions, which means he needs us to be capable of feeling them before he can harvest them. What if we could find a way to amplify those emotions to levels his technology can't handle?" Dr. Vasquez's eyes lit up with understanding. "An emotional feedback cascade. If we could generate enough positive emotional energy in a concentrated area, it might overload his harvesting systems. But how do you weaponize happiness?" Ambassador Krell asked skeptically. Chun felt a spark of inspiration. "Music, art, celebration, everything that makes us human. What if we could organize the largest celebration in human history right here on Earth? 8 billion people simultaneously experiencing joy and laughter and love. The quantum resonance might be powerful enough to not just resist Vexthal's harvest, but actually damage his station. The risk is enormous," Mitchell pointed out. "If it doesn't work, we'll be handing him the greatest prize in the galaxy." "If we don't try, we lose anyway," Chen replied. "But there's precedent for this kind of approach. Remember the Festival of Unity after the Hegemony Wars? When 2 billion humans celebrated peace simultaneously, the quantum resonance was detected by ships light years away. We just never realized what we were seeing." Dr. Vasquez was already running calculations on her datapad. The energy output from a coordinated global celebration could theoretically generate quantum field fluctuations several orders of magnitude greater than anything in our database. If we could focus that energy, it would require perfect coordination, Webb pointed out. Every major population center on Earth would need to participate simultaneously. The timing would have to be precise to the nanosecond. Mitchell looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. "We're talking about gambling the fate of human civilization on an untested theory. Does anyone have a better idea?" The silence that followed was answer enough. After several long moments, Ambassador Krell spoke up. "The Centauri Federation pledges its support. Our remaining ships will help coordinate the celebration and provide defensive coverage during the operation." One by one, the other surviving species added their agreement. Despite their own losses, despite the overwhelming odds against success, they were willing to support humanity's desperate gambit. "Then it's decided," Mitchell said. "Captain Chun, I'm placing you in charge of Operation Joyous Thunder. You have 36 hours to organize the largest celebration in human history and turn it into a weapon capable of destroying a cosmic horror. God help us all." As the assembly broke up and representatives rushed to coordinate with their respective fleets, Chen found herself overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task ahead. She needed to reach every human settlement on Earth and convince them to participate in what would sound like madness to most people. How do you tell someone that their laughter might be the key to saving the galaxy? The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Communication networks that had been designed for commerce and diplomacy were repurposed to carry Chen's message to every corner of Earth. The response was initially skeptical. The idea of fighting an alien invasion with a planet-wide party seemed absurd on its face. But as reports continued to arrive from the outer colonies, as families lost contact with loved ones on harvested worlds, The skepticism gave way to desperate determination. If laughter and joy were humanity's weapons against cosmic nihilism, then humanity would laugh louder than it ever had before. The coordination effort required unprecedented cooperation between Earth's various governments and cultural groups. Time zone differences that normally complicated global communications became assets as different regions could maintain the celebration around the clock. Entertainment industries that had been rivals for centuries suddenly found themselves working together to create the most spectacular show ever conceived. Musicians composed symphonies designed to evoke maximum joy. Comedians crafted routines intended to generate sustained laughter. Artists created installations meant to inspire wonder and hope. And through it all, ordinary people prepared to open their hearts and souls to emotions that might literally save the world. Dr. Vasquez established monitoring stations around the globe to measure the quantum resonance generated by the celebration. Her preliminary tests with smaller gatherings showed promising results. Even a few hundred people celebrating together could generate detectable field fluctuations. But the scale they needed for Operation Joyous Thunder was unprecedented. The theoretical calculations looked good, she reported to Chun during one of their planning sessions. But we've never attempted to focus this much emotional energy before. There's a risk that the quantum cascade could become unstable. What kind of risk? Chun asked. Best case scenario, it just disperses harmlessly. Worst case, well, we could accidentally tear a hole in space-time. Consciousness and reality are more closely connected than we ever realized. Chun stared out the window of Luna Station at the blue marble of Earth spinning slowly in the distance. 8 billion people lived on that world, each with their own dreams and hopes and fears. In just over a day, they would all need to come together in a moment of pure joy, knowing that the fate of not just their world but their entire species hung in the balance. Captain, Torres called from the communication station. I'm receiving a transmission from the outer system. It's Vexthal. Put it through. The main screen flickered, and once again the gaunt figure of Vexthal appeared. But this time something was different. His usual expression of cold malice had been replaced by something that might have been amusement. Ah, Captain Chun, he said, his voice carrying notes of mock appreciation. I have been monitoring your communications. A celebration? You believe that throwing a party will somehow protect you from my harvest? How deliciously naive. Chun kept her expression neutral, though inside her heart was racing. If Vexthal knew about their plan, he could adjust his approach accordingly. But perhaps that knowledge could be turned to their advantage. You seem concerned about it, she replied. For someone who claims to be all-powerful, you're spending a lot of effort trying to discourage us. Vexthal's laughter was like the sound of dying stars. Concerned? Child, I'm grateful. Your little celebration will generate more emotional energy than I have harvested from entire star systems. When I drain that joy from 8 billion humans simultaneously, the feast will sustain me for millennia. The transmission cut off, leaving Chun and her team in tense silence. If Vexthal was telling the truth, then Operation Joyous Thunder wasn't just a desperate gambit. It was potentially giving him exactly what he wanted. But as Chun looked around at her team, at the determination in their faces despite the fear, she realized something important. Vexthal might be able to harvest joy and hope and love, but he had never understood what truly drove those emotions. The celebration they were planning wasn't just about generating energy. It was about affirming everything that made life worth living in the face of cosmic nihilism. And if there was one thing humans had always been good at, it was refusing to surrender hope even when hope seemed impossible. Tomorrow, they would find out if the power of human joy could overcome the hunger of the void itself. The transformation of Earth in the final hours before Vexthal's arrival was unlike anything in human history. Every major city had become a stage. Every public space a venue for the greatest celebration the world had ever seen. From the soaring towers of Neo-Tokyo to the floating platforms of New Venice, humanity was preparing to laugh in the face of cosmic horror. Captain Chun stood in the command center that had been hastily constructed in Central Park, surrounded by holographic displays showing celebration preparations across the globe. The irony wasn't lost on her that they were attempting to save the world from the very heart of one of its greatest cities, using joy as a weapon in a place where millions of people had come to find happiness for centuries. Final countdown begins in 60 minutes. Dr. Vasquez announced from her position at the Quantum Resonance Monitoring Station. Banks of instruments that had never been designed for this purpose hummed with activity, measuring fluctuations in space-time that most scientists had never believed existed. All monitoring stations report ready status. She nodded, though her attention was focused on the tactical display showing Vexthal Station approaching the outer edge of the solar system. The massive structure was even more horrifying in detail than her first encounter had suggested. Twisted spires that seemed to fold through dimensions stretched for hundreds of kilometers, connected by energy conduits that pulsed with that same sickly green light. At the center of it all was what appeared to be a massive collection chamber, already glowing with the accumulated joy of 1,000 harvested worlds. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from his communication post. "I'm receiving updates from the celebration coordinators worldwide. Participation rates are exceeding our most optimistic projections. We're looking at nearly 7.8 billion people actively participating." Despite the dire circumstances, Chun felt a surge of pride in her species. When faced with extinction, humans hadn't despaired or surrendered. Instead, they had chosen to celebrate everything that made existence meaningful. Children who had never heard of quantum physics were preparing to laugh away a cosmic nightmare. Parents who had lost everything were choosing to sing songs of hope. Elderly people who had seen the worst of human nature were ready to dance for the future of their species. "Any word from the colonies?" Shin asked. "The outer settlements report ready status," Torres replied. "They're synchronizing their celebrations with Earth's schedule. Even the mining platforms in the asteroid belt are participating. It's incredible, Captain. Everyone wants to be part of this." The communication board lit up with incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Admiral Mitchell's voice came through on the priority channel. "All ships are in position. The surviving Council fleets are maintaining defensive formation around Earth. Whatever happens with Operation Joyous Thunder, we'll make sure Vexthal has to go through us to reach the planet." Chin appreciated the gesture, but she knew that conventional weapons would be useless against Vexthal's technology. The real battle would be fought not with energy cannons or quantum torpedoes, but with laughter and music and the fundamental human refusal to surrender hope. "Dr. Vasquez," she called out, "what's our current resonance baseline?" "The pre-celebration readings are already remarkable," Vasquez replied, her eyes wide with amazement as she studied the data streams. "Just the anticipation and preparation activities are generating quantum field fluctuations at levels we've never recorded. If the full celebration achieves its projected output," she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the command center understood the stakes. Either they were about to create the most powerful expression of positive emotion in galactic history, or they were about to hand Vexthal the ultimate feast. The main screen shifted to show live feeds from celebration sites around the world. In Mumbai, millions of people filled the streets with traditional dances that had been passed down for generations, their movements synchronized to music that blended classical Indian instruments with cutting-edge quantum harmonics. In Rio de Janeiro, carnival floats decorated with images of Earth's diverse cultures paraded through streets lined with cheering crowds. In London, symphony orchestras performed a piece specifically composed for the occasion, its melodies designed to evoke every positive emotion the human heart could feel. But it was the smaller, more intimate celebrations that truly captured the spirit of what humanity was attempting. In small towns and rural communities, families gathered in their homes to share meals and stories, their quiet laughter adding to the global resonance. Children drew pictures of rainbows and spaceships, their innocent joy contributing as much to the quantum field as the massive celebrations in major cities. 30 minutes to commencement, Torres announced. Chun felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like never before. She had led ships into battle against pirates and hostile aliens. She had negotiated peace treaties and explored uncharted systems. But never before had she been responsible for coordinating an operation that could determine the fate of human civilization. "Captain," a new voice called from the back of the command center. Chin turned to see a young girl, perhaps 8 years old, being escorted by one of the security officers. The child had dark hair and bright, curious eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with wonder rather than fear. "This is Emma Rodriguez," the security officer explained. "She insisted on delivering a message to you personally." Chin knelt down to the girl's level, struck by the calm confidence in Emma's demeanor. "What's your message, Emma?" "My mom says you're the one organizing the big party to stop the mean alien," Emma said matter-of-factly. "I wanted you to know that all the kids in my school are really excited. We've been practicing our best laughs all week." Despite everything, Chun couldn't help but smile. "That's wonderful, Emma. What's your best laugh like?" Emma's face lit up with genuine delight, and she let out a laugh that was pure, unbridled joy. It was the sound of childhood innocence and wonder, the kind of laughter that came from a heart that had never known true despair. The sound seemed to hang in the air for a moment, and Chin noticed that several of the quantum resonance monitors spiked briefly. "That was beautiful," Chin said. "But you should probably get back to your family now. The celebration is starting soon." "I know," Emma said, "but I wanted to tell you something important. The mean alien thinks he's scary, but he's not really. He's just sad because he forgot how to laugh. Maybe if we laugh loud enough, he'll remember and stop being mean." Out of the mouths of babes, Chun thought. Emma's innocent perspective cut through all the complex scientific theories and military strategies to the heart of what they were really fighting. Vexthal wasn't just a cosmic predator. He was a being that had somehow become so disconnected from joy that he could only sustain himself by stealing it from others. "Emma," Chun said gently, "do you think you could help us with something very important?" "Sure. When a celebration starts, I want you to laugh as loud and as joyfully as you can. And I want you to think about all the good things in the universe, your family, your friends, your favorite games, everything that makes you happy. Can you do that?" "That's easy," Emma giggled. "I think about happy things all the time." As Emma was escorted back to the civilian celebration areas, Chin found herself thinking about the girl's words. Perhaps the key to defeating Vexthal wasn't just generating enough emotional energy to overload his systems. Perhaps it was about reminding him of what he had lost when he chose to consume rather than create joy. 15 minutes to commencement, Torres announced. The final preparations were a marvel of human coordination. Television and internet networks that normally competed for audience share were working together to ensure global synchronization. The International Space Station had been converted into a broadcast hub, beaming the celebration schedule to every corner of the solar system. Even the automated systems on unmanned space probes had been programmed to transmit humanity's laughter into the cosmic void. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "Vexthal Station has entered the outer solar system. He's positioning himself between Mars and Jupiter, close enough to begin the harvesting process, but far enough out to observe our response." Chin studied the tactical display. Vexthal's positioning was strategic. From that distance, he could monitor the celebration and adjust his harvesting technology accordingly. He was treating this like a scientific experiment, curious to see how much emotional energy humanity could generate before he consumed it all. "All stations report ready," Torres announced. "Global synchronization at 99.7%. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Chun activated the global communication network, her voice reaching every human settlement in the solar system simultaneously. "Citizens of Earth, citizens of humanity, this is Captain Chun. In 5 minutes, we will begin the greatest celebration in our species' history. Today, we prove that joy is stronger than despair, that love is more powerful than hate, and that the human spirit cannot be extinguished by any force in the universe. Around the world, 8 billion people prepare to laugh as one. Musicians raised their instruments, dancers took their positions, and families gathered close together. Children clutched handmade noisemakers, elderly people remembered songs from their youth, and everyone prepared to pour their hearts into an expression of pure, defiant joy. 2 minutes, Torres announced. The quantum resonance monitors were already showing unprecedented readings. The anticipation itself was generating field fluctuations that dwarfed anything in the scientific literature. Dr. Vasquez was frantically taking readings. Her equipment pushed far beyond its normal operating parameters. 1 minute. Chen found herself thinking about Emma Rodriguez and her infectious laughter, about the families gathered in their homes, choosing hope over fear, about the musicians and artists who had worked around the clock to create beauty in the face of cosmic horror, about every human being who had ever looked up at the stars and dared to dream of something better. 10 seconds. The countdown reached 0, and Earth exploded into celebration. The quantum resonance readings went off the scale immediately. 8 billion voices raised in song, laughter, and joyful exclamation created a wave of positive emotion so powerful that it registered on instruments throughout the solar system. The very fabric of space-time rippled with humanity's defiant happiness. In Mumbai, the synchronized dancers leaped as one, their movements creating patterns that seemed to write poetry in motion across the quantum field. In Rio, the carnival floats blazed with light and color that translated into peaks of emotional energy. In London, the symphony orchestras played notes that resonated not just in the air, but in the fundamental structure of reality itself. But the most powerful moment came from the children. Across the world, millions of young voices joined in laughter that was pure and unself-conscious. Their joy was untempered by adult fears or doubts, creating resonance patterns that seemed to pierce through dimensional barriers. The readings are incredible, Dr. Vasquez shouted over the celebration noise. The quantum field fluctuations are exceeding every theoretical projection. We're literally rewriting the laws of physics. On the tactical display, Chun could see the effect of the celebration reaching Vexthal Station. The massive structure, which had seemed so imposing and indestructible, was beginning to flicker and distort. The green energy that had powered its harvesting systems was being overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of Earth's joy. But something unexpected was happening as well. Instead of simply overloading or destroying Vexthal's technology, the emotional energy seemed to be interacting with it in ways no one had predicted. The twisted spires of the station were beginning to straighten, and the sickly green light was gradually shifting toward warmer, more natural colors. "Captain," Torres called out, his voice filled with amazement. "I'm receiving a transmission from Vexthal Station. But the signal, it's different. The harmonics are completely changed. Put it through." The screen flickered, and for a moment Chen thought there had been a technical malfunction. The being that appeared bore only a passing resemblance to the cosmic horror they had first encountered. Vexthal was still tall and thin, but his features had softened. The cruel angles of his face had become gentle curves, and his eyes, which had once glowed with predatory hunger, now shimmered with something that looked like wonder. "Captain Shun," he said, and his voice was completely different, warm and musical where it had once been cold and menacing. What have you done to me?" Chun felt her heart racing as she realized what was happening. The quantum resonance generated by humanity's celebration hadn't just overloaded Vexthal's harvesting technology. It had fundamentally altered his consciousness. The concentrated joy of 8 billion humans had somehow restored his capacity to feel positive emotions. "We haven't done anything to you," she replied carefully. "We've simply shared our joy with the universe. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" Vexthal looked around at his station, seeming to see it clearly for the first time in eons. The twisted architecture that had once housed machines of cosmic predation was transforming into something beautiful. Crystalline gardens were growing from the metal walls, and the harvesting chambers were converting themselves into art galleries filled with the stored emotions of 1,000 worlds. I remember now, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and regret. I remember what it felt like to create instead of consume, to build instead of harvest. I remember laughter, and then, for the first time in millennia, Vexthal laughed. It was a hesitant, rusty sound at first, like machinery that hadn't been used in ages. But as it continued, it became stronger and more joyful, adding its own unique harmonic to the celebration that was still resonating across the solar system. The transformation wasn't just affecting Vexthal personally. Throughout his station, the stored emotional energy that had been harvested from 1,000 worlds was beginning to resonate with Earth's celebration. Like tuning forks struck in harmony, the captured joy was amplifying and reflecting back toward its points of origin. "Dr. Vasquez," Chin called out, "are you reading this?" "It's impossible," Vasquez replied, her voice filled with awe. "The quantum resonance cascade is actually reversing the harvesting process. The emotional energy is returning to its sources. The affected worlds, their populations are regaining their capacity for joy. Across the galaxy, dead worlds were coming back to life. Not in the biological sense. The physical damage done by Vexthal's harvest couldn't be undone so easily. But the spiritual damage, the fundamental alteration of consciousness that had left entire populations as empty shells, was being repaired by the wave of joy radiating out from Earth celebration. "Captain Chun," Vexthal's voice came through the communication system again. "I owe you and your species an apology that spans millennia. I had forgotten what I truly was, consumed by hunger for emotions I could no longer generate myself. Your celebration has reminded me that joy shared is joy multiplied, not diminished." "What happens now?" Chin asked. "Now, I begin the work of redemption," Vexthal replied. "My stations throughout the galaxy will be converted from harvesting platforms into celebration centers. Instead of draining joy from worlds, they will help amplify and share it. I have eons of creation to make up for eons of consumption." As Earth's celebration continued, now joined by the restored voices of 1,000 worlds, Chin found herself thinking again about Emma Rodriguez and her simple wisdom. The child had been right. Vexthal hadn't been evil, just sad and lonely, having forgotten how to create his own happiness. The greatest victory in human history hadn't been won with weapons or technology, but with the simple, profound act of choosing joy in the face of despair. And in doing so, humanity had not only saved themselves, but had redeemed a cosmic horror and restored hope to an entire galaxy. The laughter of one human child had begun a cascade that would echo through the stars for generations to come. 6 months after the celebration that had transformed the galaxy, Captain Chin stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, watching something that would have been impossible to imagine just a year ago. Where Vexthal's twisted harvesting station had once hung in the void between Mars and Jupiter, a magnificent crystal city now floated in space, its translucent spires catching and refracting the light of Sol into brilliant rainbows that painted the surrounding space with impossible beauty. The transformation had been gradual, but constant. Vexthal, whose name he had changed to Velthari, meaning bringer of joy in the ancient tongue of his species, had worked tirelessly to convert his technologies of consumption into instruments of creation. The former harvesting chambers had become concert halls where the music of 100 worlds played simultaneously. The energy conduits that had once drained planets now pulsed with warm, golden light that somehow made everyone who saw it feel more hopeful. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres announced from the bridge communication station, "we're receiving the daily harmony report from the Galactic Restoration Council." "Put it through to the observation deck," Chin replied, though she kept her eyes fixed on the Crystal City. Even after months of working with Velthari, she still found it difficult to believe that the being who had once threatened all sentient life had become the galaxy's greatest advocate for joy and peace. The holographic display materialized beside her, showing statistics that would have seemed like fantasy just a year ago. 734 previously harvested worlds have been restored to full emotional capacity. The quantum resonance cascade triggered by Earth's celebration had propagated throughout the galaxy, reaching even the most distant systems and reawakening the capacity for joy in populations that had been reduced to empty shells. But the restoration hadn't stopped there. Velthari's network of converted stations was actively amplifying positive emotions throughout the galaxy. Worlds that had never been harvested in the first place were experiencing unprecedented levels of happiness and creativity. Art, music, and literature were flourishing as species discovered new depths of emotional expression they had never known they possessed. "There's something else, Captain," Torres continued. "The Council has received a request from the Andromedan Collective. They want to establish diplomatic relations and learn about our joy amplification technology." Chen smiled at the phrase. Trust bureaucrats to turn the greatest expression of human spirit in history into a technical specification. But she understood the underlying request. Word of what had happened at Earth had spread beyond the Milky Way galaxy, and other civilizations were beginning to realize that consciousness and emotion played a far more fundamental role in the structure of reality than anyone had previously understood. "Tell them we'll be happy to share our experiences," she said. "Schedule a conference for next month, and make sure to invite representatives from all the restored worlds. This isn't just about human technology, it's about what we've learned working together." The past 6 months had seen changes that went far beyond the technical transformation of Velthari stations. The crisis had forced the various species of the Galactic Council to work together in ways they never had before, sharing not just resources and knowledge, but emotions and cultural experiences. The result had been an unprecedented flowering of interspecies understanding and cooperation. Chen's personal communication device chimed with an incoming message. The holographic display showed the face of Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had become the galaxy's leading expert on consciousness resonance theory, and was currently working directly with Velthari to understand the deeper principles behind their emotional technology. "Zura," Dr. Vasquez said, her excitement evident even through the holographic transmission. "You need to see what we've discovered. Velthari has been teaching us about the fundamental relationship between consciousness and space-time, and the implications are staggering." "I'll be there in an hour," Chen replied, though part of her wondered if she truly wanted to know just how much their understanding of reality was about to change again. The shuttle flight to Velthari's Crystal City was a journey through wonder. As they approached, Chen could see that the structure was still growing, new crystalline formations sprouting from the central core like flowers blooming in slow motion. Each new addition served a specific purpose. Sometimes a laboratory where scientists from different species worked together to explore the mysteries of consciousness. Sometimes a performance space where artists collaborated to create works that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. The docking bay was a marvel of engineering that somehow felt organic. Instead of the harsh metal and aggressive angles typical of most space stations, everything here flowed with curves and spirals that seemed to echo the quantum patterns of positive emotion themselves. As Chen disembarked, she was greeted by the sound of distant music and laughter, the city's permanent soundtrack of joy that somehow never became overwhelming or intrusive. Velthari met her at the entrance to the Central Research Complex, and Chen still felt a moment of wonder every time she saw him. The transformation from cosmic horror to benevolent creator was complete. He moved with grace instead of predatory menace, and his eyes sparkled with genuine warmth and curiosity. He had grown taller somehow, as if joy had allowed him to stand straighter, and his robes now seemed to be woven from starlight itself. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that made everyone around him feel more optimistic. "Thank you for coming so quickly. What we have discovered will change how every species understands their place in the universe. Dr. Vasquez was waiting in the main laboratory, surrounded by instruments that looked like they belonged more in an art museum than a science facility. Crystalline arrays that measured emotional resonance in real time created constantly shifting patterns of light and sound, while holographic displays showed quantum field equations that incorporated consciousness as a fundamental force alongside gravity and electromagnetism. "Zara, look at this," Dr. Vasquez said, activating a three-dimensional display that showed the structure of local space-time. "We always assumed that consciousness was something that happened inside the universe, that our thoughts and emotions were purely internal experiences. But that's completely wrong." The display shifted, zooming out to show the galaxy as a whole. Instead of the familiar spiral of stars and dust, Chen found herself looking at a vast web of interconnected energy patterns that pulsed with the rhythms of life itself. Every inhabited world appeared as a bright node in the network, connected to others by streams of light that she gradually realized represented the flow of emotional resonance between civilizations. "Consciousness isn't inside the universe," Veltheri explained, his voice filled with the wonder of rediscovery. "The universe is inside consciousness. What you call space-time is actually the result of collective emotional resonance from all sentient beings. The physical laws that govern reality are stabilized by the thoughts and feelings of everyone who exists." Chen felt her worldview shifting beneath her feet. "You're saying that our emotions literally shape the universe?" "Not just shape," Dr. Vasquez corrected. "Create. Reality exists because sentient beings believe it should exist, and the specific form it takes depends on the collective emotional state of all conscious life. Fear and despair lead to a universe that's hostile and chaotic, but joy and love and hope create a universe that's stable and beautiful and full of possibility." The implications were staggering. If consciousness truly was the fundamental force that created and maintained reality, then the celebration that had transformed Vexthal into Veltheri hadn't just saved the galaxy. It had literally made the universe a better place to exist. "This is why my harvesting technology was so destructive," Veltheri said, his voice carrying notes of regret and wonder. "I wasn't just stealing emotions from individual beings. I was damaging the fundamental structure of reality itself. Every world I harvested became a dark node in the consciousness network, creating zones of instability that affected entire regions of space. But the restoration process has done the opposite," Dr. Vasquez added. "The joy cascade that began with Earth's celebration has strengthened the consciousness network throughout the galaxy. Stars are burning more steadily, planetary orbits are more stable, and even the fundamental constants of physics have become more favorable to life." Chen walked over to one of the crystalline display arrays, watching as it showed real-time readings from across the galaxy. She could see the network of consciousness as it pulsed with the collective emotions of trillions of beings. The Earth node blazed particularly brightly, its emotional output amplified by the memory of that great celebration and the ongoing cultural changes it had inspired. But there was something else in the display that caught her attention. Far at the edge of their galaxy, almost at the boundary with intergalactic space, there were dark zones where the consciousness network seemed to be failing. Empty patches where the light of sentient thought had been extinguished entirely. "What are those dark areas?" she asked, pointing to the disturbing gaps in the network. Veltheri followed her gaze, and his expression grew troubled. "Those are regions where the consciousness network has collapsed entirely. They represent civilizations that have been consumed by entities like what I once was." "You mean there are others like you were?" Chun felt a chill run down her spine. "Many others," Veltheri confirmed. "I was part of a species that lost its way eons ago. When we first discovered the relationship between consciousness and reality, some of us chose to preserve and nurture it. But others, like myself, became obsessed with controlling it. We developed the harvesting technology to steal emotions rather than generate them, thinking we could make ourselves masters of the universe. What happened to your people? Dr. Vasquez asked. The Devourers, as they came to be known, spread throughout multiple galaxies, harvesting the joy from entire galactic clusters. But consciousness is not infinite. It must be constantly renewed through the genuine experiences of living beings. Eventually, we consumed more than could be regenerated, and vast regions of the universe collapsed into emotional void zones where reality itself became unstable. The display zoomed out further, showing the intergalactic medium between the great spiral galaxies. Chun could see the dark zones Velthary was describing, vast regions where the stars themselves seemed dimmer, where the normal structure of space appeared twisted and wrong. My own people were among the victims of this cosmic hunger, Velthary continued. Our homeworld was harvested by one of the first Devourers, and I spent millennia trying to reclaim what had been stolen. But instead of learning to create joy again, I became a harvester myself, perpetuating the very cycle that had destroyed my family. Chun felt a deep sympathy for the being who had once been her greatest enemy. To spend eons searching for happiness only to become the very thing that had stolen it in the first place. It was a tragedy of cosmic proportions. But that's why what happened here is so important, Velthary said, his voice brightening with renewed hope. Your celebration didn't just restore the harvested worlds in this galaxy. It proved that the cycle can be broken. Joy shared exponentially grows rather than diminishing, and consciousness networks can be healed and strengthened through genuine emotional connection. Dr. Vasquez activated another display, this one showing projections based on their current understanding of consciousness dynamics. If we can replicate what happened here on a larger scale, we might be able to restore the entire universe. The void zones between galaxies could be re-illuminated with consciousness, bringing dead regions back to life. That's the real work ahead of us, Velthary said. Converting my fellow Devourers isn't enough. We need to build a network of joy that spans the entire universe, strong enough to heal the damage that has been accumulating for millions of years. Chun studied the cosmic display, trying to comprehend the sheer magnitude of what they were discussing. The celebration that had saved Earth and transformed one cosmic horror was apparently just the beginning. They were talking about healing the universe itself, about bringing life and consciousness to regions of space that had been dark for eons. How do we even begin something like that? She asked. The same way we solved the crisis here, Velthary replied with a smile that somehow seemed to brighten the entire laboratory. With laughter, with joy, with the fundamental human understanding that hope is stronger than despair. We start small, one person, one family, one community at a time, and let the resonance cascade spread naturally. There's something else, Dr. Vasquez said, her voice dropping to an excited whisper. The children who participated in the original celebration have shown permanent changes in their consciousness patterns. They're generating emotional resonance at levels we've never recorded before. It's as if exposure to the joy cascade has awakened latent potential in human consciousness. Chun thought immediately of Emma Rodriguez and her infectious laughter. What kind of changes? Enhanced empathy, increased creativity, and, most remarkably, a natural ability to sense and strengthen the consciousness network around them. These children seem to instinctively understand how to amplify joy and help others access deeper levels of emotional resonance. The implications were profound. If the next generation of humans had enhanced consciousness abilities, and if those abilities could be taught to other species, then the universe-spanning restoration project Velthary described might actually be possible. I want to meet with some of these children, Chun said, especially Emma Rodriguez. If she's the future of human consciousness evolution, then we need to understand what she represents. As they made plans for the next phase of their work, Chun found herself filled with a sense of purpose unlike anything she had experienced before. The galaxy had been saved, but the real adventure was just beginning. They were embarking on a mission to heal the universe itself, armed with nothing more than laughter, hope, and the revolutionary understanding that joy shared was the most powerful force in existence. Outside the Crystal City's viewports, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself was smiling in anticipation of the wonders yet to come.